This is the entrance into the Truman Brewery Market in Spitalfields, but if you'd been here in 1815, it was known as John Street. A row of 5 pre-Victorian houses were standing here at the time on the right-hand side, but you'll notice that they're not there anymore, and there's a very good reason for that. At the time, the 4th house along was the home of a man named Gaspar Lichileau, who lived with his wife, his sister, and 2 female servants, with a man named Mr. Oldham and another woman who rented the top floor. Lichileau was a barber, but he was better known locally as a firework salesman, and in order to make his fireworks, he kept large quantities of flammable materials inside the house. Within a storage room, he was also storing several large barrels of gunpowder. As 9 p.m. approached on Friday, the 17th of July, a Mr. Robinson, who was a friend of Lichileau's, arrived and called in to see him. They chatted briefly, but Robinson had somewhere else to be, and so, declining an invitation to stay for supper, he then turned to leave as 2 young boys entered through the front door and asked to buy firecrackers. On looking under the counter, Lichileau could see that he didn't have any left, and so he turned around from the storage room to fetch more as Robinson bid him a good night and left. The exact details of what happened next are unclear, but having entered the storage room, Lichileau managed to trigger a fairly substantial explosion, which almost certainly killed him, shook the house, and set fire to various parts of the storage room. The 2 boys, it seems, ran for the front door, but then, seconds later, the fire detonated the gunpowder. An enormous blast entirely leveled the house, along with both of those standing out the side, and huge beams of timber, it was said, were thrown over the tops of the houses. A young boy sitting on the pavement outside was killed, along with everyone inside the house, and 3 others in a house next door, and those that had survived the initial explosion were trapped beneath the rubble as the buildings collapsed and were burned to death. It was a terrible picture of havoc and destruction, one newspaper would report. Dozens of other buildings were damaged and countless people were injured. The fires, anyway, continued until the following afternoon, when the bodies were dragged forth from the rubble, it was said, in a mutilated state, and taken to the bone room of Christ Church on Spitalfields. An inquest was soon held at the nearby 10 Bells pub, but with the victims buried and the buildings rebuilt, the story of Gaspar Lichileau and his gunpowder explosion then gradually faded into history. I'll see you back here next week for another Morbid Monday.